Adolf Hitler was not only a fanatical dictator, but also known for planning huge, completely massive construction projects. He dreamed of creating a 1,000-year-old empire and wanted to build buildings that were nowhere else in the world. In this video, we want to show you how incredible Hitler wanted Germany to look. What you will see in a moment is completely insane even for his conditions. Among other things, you are expected to see a leader's palace, in which a single study has more space than a whole multi-family house, more blatant skyscrapers than in ancient Rome, or an infrastructure project as would not even be possible in 2023. We start our video with Hitler's most gigantic construction project, which sounds so incredible that you can't believe it. It is about the planned world capital Germany, which Adolf Hitler wanted to build instead of Berlin. In fact, the dictator had the plan that Germany should once dominate the whole world. And for this, a capital had to be built that should form the center of the planned Great Germanic Empire. Even in his book Mein Kampf, Hitler described that he longed for old magnificent buildings such as the Roman Colosseum or the Athena Parthenon. With Germany, Hitler wanted to create a city that would put every visitor in awe just by its monumental buildings, gigantic squares and magnificent streets. But it should not only be huge, but also consist of the noblest materials and have a classic style reminiscent of ancient Rome. To implement these plans, Hitler commissioned the architect Albert Speer, who thought similarly huge. One of the most spectacular buildings that Speer developed for Germany was the so-called Great Hall. This hall was to become the largest dome hall in the world and be 290 meters high and 250 meters in diameter. For comparison, the St. Peter's Cathedral in Rome is 136 meters high and 42 meters in diameter. The Great Hall was to offer space for up to 180,000 people who listened to Hitler's speeches or took part in mass events. The hall was to be built of marble and granite and decorated inside with a huge eagle that held a swastika in its claws. Hitler wanted the hall to be so big that it had its own climate as the only hall, so that clouds form on the ceiling in a natural way and that it can even rain inside. By the way, such a hall is nowhere in the world to this day. Another impressive building that was intended for Germany was the so-called Leader's Palace. This palace was to become Hitler's residence and workplace and have an area of an incredible 400,000 square meters. For comparison, the White House in Washington has an area of 5,000 square meters. The Leader's Palace was to include a 900 square meter large working room for Hitler, which would be equipped with a 10 square meter large desk. In order to get to this room, foreign visitors had to cross a 500-meter long corridor each time, which is adorned with pictures of Hitler's successes. In addition to these two buildings, there were many other plans for Germany, such as a triumphal arch, which should be 12 times larger than the Arc de Triomphe in Paris, or gigantic train stations, which should even surpass the Grand Central Station in New York by far. All these buildings should be arranged along a wide road, which he called the North-South Axis, and which should lead from northern Berlin all the way to the south. Hitler dreamed that he could later drive on this road and that the sides would be completely fenced off from the people, which he enthusiastically celebrated to his leader. In order to create space for all these buildings, a large part of old Berlin had to be torn down, of course. Speer therefore planned to destroy more than 50,000 apartments and to move more than 100,000 people. In addition, numerous historical buildings such as the Brandenburg Gate or the Reichstag building should be dilapidated or moved. The construction work for Germany began in 1937 and continued until 1942. However, Hitler did not really go far with his plans, as the resources and labor were needed for the war. But Hitler did not only want to change Berlin. In fact, there were also crazy plans for other German cities, such as Hamburg, Cologne or Munich. In Munich, the dictator planned a new main station, which should surpass all other stations in the world by far. The Schalterhalle alone should be covered by a huge, over 140 meters high and more than 250 meters wide dome. The largest landmarks in the world should look tiny compared to the Munich Central Station. In addition to the main building, there were also numerous side buildings and a monument over 200 meters high, at the top of which there should be a huge Reichsadler. In addition to such a huge station, gigantic trains should also run here. Hitler planned that the new trains should be up to 1.2 kilometers long and that the respective over 40 meters long double-deck wagons should not only be equipped with seats and sleeping places, but also with cinemas, hairdressers or luxurious bathrooms. Just for comparison, the longest ICE is about 250 meters long, so only a fifth of Hitler's planned giant train. From Munich, these trains should then also travel all over the world, via Afghanistan, India to China. The city of Nuremberg was not excluded from Hitler's construction vision either. Here, the dictator wanted to build a huge sports stadium. 400,000 people should fit into the stadium, and the ranks on which the visitors should sit should be over 100 meters high. For comparison, the currently largest stadium in the world, the Modi Stadium, which was opened in India in 2020, has almost just 130,000 visitors. Hitler also planned that the Olympic Games would no longer take place worldwide every 4 years in the future, but should only take place in this stadium in Nuremberg, by the way under the new name Pan-Germanische Spiel. For the planned stadium, the dictator had countless forced laborers dig a huge pit for the foundation. Because the work was not carried out here either, the pit was finally filled with water and the current Nuremberg Silver Sea was created. Now let's get to Hitler's plans for Hamburg and a vision for the city that sounds pretty crazy. In fact, Hamburg should become Hitler's, namely New York of Europe. To do this, the dictator wanted to triple the port, and with a 750-meter long and 180-meter high suspension bridge over the Elbe, a building should be built that puts the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco in the shade. Even crazier was the plan for the so-called Gauhaus, a gigantic skyscraper that should reach a height of 250 meters. The house should still put the skyscrapers in New York in the shade. But in fact, the Americans had already built a taller building with the Empire State Building in the 1930s. Hitler's plans for Hamburg were not implemented in any way anyway. Although countless forced laborers worked on the huge project for several years, the buildings that were built were finally completely destroyed by the air raids on Hamburg in the Second World War. But it gets even crazier. Hitler's huge construction plans did not only extend to today's Germany, but also to his entire Great German Reich, which the dictator dreamed of if he had subjugated the rest of the world. Therefore, we now want to present a few more of Hitler's crazy ideas for other countries. Under the name of European Central Clearing, he planned, for example, that all money transactions and all trade activities of all states should only be wrapped around a central point in Berlin. In fact, this process was already practiced with some occupied countries even during the Second World War. All other industries should also be centralized. Instead of individual independent chemical companies in different countries, according to Hitler's visions, there would only be individual giant corporations that would no longer have any competition. Hitler's plans for the people in occupied countries were also unimaginable. So the dictator planned to intentionally reduce some countries by letting people starve there. These then cleared areas were to be repopulated with Germans afterwards. Although the National Socialists caused incredible suffering, it can only be guessed from these plans that it would have gotten even worse if Germany had not lost the Second World War and Hitler's rule continued. With that, I would like to end today's video. Thank you all for watching. This was our journey this time, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked it, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you can come back again. I promise to always bring interesting things, but that will be next time. So, until next time. Bye!